Okay, hello. Welcome in, everybody, to the Slate. Tuesday, March 21st. Spring is in the air because it's light out at this time, and it's real nice to talk to Matt LaMarca and Gary and Thorne. It's light out East Coast, daylight savings, that whole deal. We're here to talk to you for the next 40 minutes or so to talk about a variety of things. I'm looking forward to talking about maybe the NBA. I'll say this. Both of you have been part of the shows that we've had. Jeff was with me yesterday. At least when I've been on, we've had some luck with NFL breaking news. So that could happen again. We could keep the streak going and get some NFL breaking news on the program. But not much NFL going on in the air today. Nothing really to update on the Lamar Jackson front. Well, there is a little bit of Lamar Jackson.
Ronald Jones II signed with the Cowboys. If you don't think that's big news, I don't know what to tell you, pal.
Holy crap. Ronald Jones and Tony Pollard. Look out below. Quite a backfield there. So that's the Zeke replacement, I would imagine?
No.
Oh,
they're gonna draft somebody.
Yeah, they might cut him by the time it gets to August. So, anywho, World Baseball Classic. Why don't we lead with that? WBC, because I think the fellas have thoughts. These are two baseball guys. I'm hearing it's going to be the biggest baseball event in a long time tonight at Marlins Park in Miami. Japan against the United States. U.S. favorites at -155 on the DraftKings Sportsbook on the run line.
Wow.
Plus 100. Yeah, the number's creeping. It was in the high 120s into the 140s, and now it's at -155. Total set at 10.5. Juice on the under. I had to, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I had to Google who the starting pitcher was. I read it in an article, and I said, I'm not really sure who this pitcher, Merrill Kelly, who has been with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
I thought you were going to say you didn't know who was starting for Japan. And I was like,
that's where I thought that was going to.
No. I'm talking about my country, America.
Yeah.
Geez, I know I'm a lost cause sometimes, but come on. Merrill Kelly made his MLB debut at 29 years old. He's been with the Diamondbacks the last 4 years. He had a good season a year ago. ERA in the mid-threes, won 13 games. Taking the one of my friends used to tell me, you chuck the pill. He's chucking the pill from the rubber tonight for the Americans. And for Japan, I don't think we know yet who the starting pitcher is.
No, we don't. Shota Imagana, I believe.
All I know is he's a southpaw.
Yeah.
Lefty. Okay. Very good.
He threw a no-hitter in the NPB last year. I believe he's won their ERA crown the last 2 seasons. Quite good, like most of the Japanese players.
Yeah, Japan. I think based on that, I think Japan kind of cares about the game. And I'm not sure if the United States really does.
Everybody cares about the game. I think that's been one of the most refreshing things, and I think that's kind of why this tournament has started to take hold a little bit, especially in the rest of the world, right? Like the players, it's a big deal for them to represent their country. They are taking the games very seriously. Edwin Diaz, who is maybe the best relief pitcher in baseball, the closer for my beloved New York Mets. What happened to him was unfortunate, but he stated that beating the Dominican Republic was akin to winning Game 7 of a World Series. That's how important it is for these guys. So how can I be mad at him for participating in a tournament and getting hurt that is that important to him and his country mates? It's something where, as the United States, we're kind of used to, we show up in a tournament and we expect to do well, with the exception of soccer. For a lot of these other countries,
not women's soccer, men's soccer. Yeah.
Right. They are not used to really being able to compete at the highest level. Baseball is a sport where, some of the Latin American countries and the Asian countries have really had a chance to flourish. And I think it's phenomenal. It's been very entertaining. That Japan-Mexico game was just great baseball to watch. And I am very much looking forward to watching this game this evening.
Yeah, Yoshida with the big home run last night for Japan late in the game. The theater's been excellent. I think the theater from the Latin countries, Japan has a big, their rating number, that they're a big reason why the thing's getting a draw from a television standpoint.
Well, again, this is going to be like the most watched baseball game of all time. And again, this stuff gets skewed because obviously there's so many more ways to access this game than there's ever been before. But
right.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And yes, a lot of it is coming from Japan. I think something like half of the households in Japan have been watching these games. It's of huge importance to some of these countries. And like Matt was saying, like some of these rivalries run deep. I know the Japan-Korea game early on in seeding play was a really big deal for Korea. And they unfortunately didn't show up that well in that game, and they had lost their first contest. It was almost a must win for them in that circumstance, which is almost why I'm a little happy that Merrill Kelly is starting this game because, you guys are American, I'm Canadian. And sometimes when you don't finish in the final of every single like world event, you have to pick and choose like a player that might have a weird tie to your country. And that sort of signifies where your rooting interests lie. And I feel like for Korea, they weren't going to cheer for Japan anyway, most likely. However, you've got KBO legend Merrill Kelly taking the mound tonight. I just think it sets up a really easy rooting situation for the entire country of Korea. So I know sometimes we get this perception where it's like, well, no one's cheering for the U.S. except for the U.S. Tonight, it is probably the U.S. and Korea, and then everyone else is cheering for Japan. That's
fascinating. I did not know that. In the KBO days for this particular stream, YouTube, Twitch, we go back now. Korean baseball carried us during a time when sports weren't happening, but of course that goes on well before that. But that's what whenever I hear KBO, I think of when everything, when hell broke loose.
I have an NC Dinos hat. It's just a real
awesome.
Interesting time in my life.
So with all that being said, does the United States actually deserve to be a favorite in this game?
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes. I don't think they deserve to be minus 155. When I was thinking the numbers out in my head, I was thinking more like minus 130, minus 140. So I do think there's a little bit of betting value with Japan. I won't actually bet on Japan because, I want to root for the USA tonight.
Yeah, Lamaka, be a patriot.
But I think that if you're just looking at this from a pure numbers standpoint, Japan is the play here. They match up with the Americans, maybe they don't have as much talent top to bottom with their lineup, but they have a lot of very dangerous hitters. We know about their pitching. In a lot of ways, it's superior to what the Americans have, especially if Shohei Ohtani does pitch an inning or two, which has been, rumored. So I think that the U.S. are going to have their hands full tonight. Their offense is good enough that they can, pile up runs against anybody. But these Japanese pitchers, it's probably going to be one of their toughest tests, if not their toughest test of the tournament.
Have we seen a lineup yet? I've been trying to find one. I have not seen a lineup yet for the United States tonight.
Not yet, but they've had a pretty similar build. I would expect maybe like Tim Anderson slots in tonight just because he's so good at pitching.
I think we could also see Pete Alonso start at DH over Kyle Schwarber.
Yep, that's a possibility too.
Righty thing. Yep.
And that's why the Americans have to be favored. I mean, even if I know such a big storyline of this tournament has been who isn't there for the States, because you start looking at like the WAR lists of starting pitchers from last season, and you go like, wow, none of the top 20 American pitchers are pitching in this tournament. It's disappointing. But when you look at the positional WAR lists, looks pretty good for the Americans. When you've got Pete Alonso and Tim Anderson coming off your bench as platoon bats. This lineup is incredible. The Trey Turner home run is going to be an indelible moment in like American baseball history, or at least recent American baseball history. And Trey Turner feels that way. He said it was the most important hit he's ever had in his life.
You could see it in the dugout on his face. Yeah. He kind of like blacks out for a second. Like, I can't believe
he's hitting ninth. That's going to be the thing. And that like Trey, like everyone's like, wow. Like I remember that inning. It was like they said the hitters coming to the plate in after the pitching change and commercial break for the Americans, and you see the list and you have to remind yourself Trey Turner is batting ninth in this lineup. Like it's insane. And that's why I think, because I like Matt, I saw this line this morning. I think it was 135, 140 for the Americans. And I was like, that's a fair number. I think that's a pretty good spot to bet the Americans. And now that it's been bet up, I probably don't want to take it at that number. However, I am interested in the over. I think. Merrill Kelly was not amazing in his first start of this tournament. And I know, as we've talked about, there are some rumors that not only is Shohei Ohtani possibly going to pitch out of the bullpen in this game, but Yu Darvish could also pitch out of the bullpen in this game. And he's already pitched out of the bullpen in the WBC. So this is not unprecedented by any means. However, I think it's worth noting that we've sort of found out like the U.S. pitching path, or at least the first two guys. It's going to be Merrill Kelly, and then he's going to be piggybacked by Brady Singer, who has also not looked good in this tournament. Both of those guys, very good seasons in 2022, I should say. There's not a lot of like nits to pick with those guys last year, but if there is one, both have significantly better splits against right-handed batters than they do left-handed batters. Singer in particular gives up a lot more home runs to left-handed bats than he did to right-handed bats, whereas Merrill Kelly just sort of loses control. He's like a pristine walk rate pitcher against right-handed batters. That walk rate jumps over 10% against left-handed batters, or at least it did last season. The 5 best bats in Japan's lineup, the top 5 bats in their lineup, if they go with the same lineup they rolled out last night, are all left-handed bats. So I do think Japan matches up pretty well with the American pitching they'll see tonight, whereas the American lineup, regardless of who they're going against, is just one of the strongest lineups we've ever seen in the history of baseball. So I'm always tending to think they're going to put up runs. So I think over 10.5 is in play here.
I see a lineup out for tonight, and it's different than what we've talked about. Betts, Trout, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Schwarber is in the lineup DHing.
Okay.
Turner's moved up in the lineup. Turner's now batting 6th.
Probably because Tucker's out, I think, right?
Yep. Real Muto at catcher, Cedric Mullins, Tim Anderson at second, and then
Mullins. Interesting.
So Turner's batting Turner's batting 6th. Yes. Anderson will now bat in the 9th spot.
Okay. Again, you're nitpicking. Cedric Mullins can't hit lefties, but who cares when he's your 8th?
Yeah, you're probably only getting an at-bat or two against a left-handed pitcher anyway, so. And they can pinch hit. They can bring Jeff McNeil in at some point. Like, the lineup that starts will not be the lineup that finishes the game.
Okay, very good. So you guys Marco, do you share similar sentiment on an over for this game based on Garion's analysis?
I mean, Garion makes some good points. I haven't given a ton of thought to the total. But I mean, when the Americans seem to be putting up double-digit runs basically every game, I think it makes some sense, right? Because it's not just that we've brought a lot of our best hitters to this tournament. They all seem to be locked in at the dish right now. Trout, Trey Turner, Arenado, Goldschmidt, like all of these guys continue to just hit. And when you have players of that caliber and they appear to be locked in, you're going to put some runs on the board.
And so I guess in the United States, you don't think is playable at minus 155.
I mean, you can.
I mean, listen, you could do anything you want to do, right? Well, anything's playable if you want to be a Patriot, Glash. But from a pure math perspective, no, I would not be betting them at minus 155.
But you could even, if you want to just take the run line, just if you want a little more juice, I'm not going to hate you for that. I think they deserve to be favored at the end of the day. It's just tough when the line was minus 135 an hour and a half ago. You kind of just feel like you missed the boat a little bit. But no, I think the Americans are going to win. So I can't say that betting them at that number is a bad idea if I think they're going to win.
Okay, yep. And as the guys mentioned, Ohtani is on record that if he's got to throw tonight, he will. He'll be prepared to pitch whenever. And he threw 71 pitches 5 days ago. So that's a normal turn. And as Garion said, or maybe Garion said this before he went on live, that Ohtani is in line to start opening day for the Angels.
Yeah, there were some reports that came. Again, these are Bob Nightingale reports, so take them with a grain of salt. Although he does seem to be connected at this tournament. The reporting seems to be that Ohtani, because I know initially the Angels were like, you're not pitching in the second, the semis or the final. You get your start in pool play and that's it. And he sort of was like, sure. I wear the pants in this relationship, Artie Moreno. You know that. So I think he's fine. And he came out and I guess sort of try to smooth things over. It was just because, as you said, he threw 71 pitches. I think he's like, I'm ready for opening day. I'm built up. I'm fine. built up being the key term, because Darvish, the reporting today was the Padres are prepared to not have him be ready to start opening day or be fully built up on opening day. But again, at this point, that probably one of the biggest DFS strategies on opening day anyway is like reading the tea leaves and seeing which guys are only going to throw 75 pitches. So I don't think it's that big a deal. But if you're looking for, if a fan base is looking to be angry right now, who's getting screwed over the most, and you're not an Astros fan or a Mets fan dealing with a major injury right now, Padres are probably 3 on the list because the Darvish situation.
Yeah, the Diaz angle you can't help it. It's like, I'm not even going to say it because I just thought about it. That's a horrible comparison. I'm not even going to go there.
But again, the Altuve injury, like, I think that's a more justified anger because it happened during the game. Like, again,
right.
Edwin Diaz, it was such a freak accident, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
Again,
it wasn't even a baseball injury. It was
one franchise to practice World Series celebrations in spring training.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. Like, it's funny. When it happened, I was really worried. I thought that, like, this might be the thing that sort of ruins what had to that point even had been a really fun tournament. And it almost seems like the backlash to the backlash has helped the WBC. Like, it's been such a conversation point because of some of the negativity that I think overall it's even helped. And again, this doesn't matter if, like, the next 4 games coming out of that injury are just blowouts and are uncompetitive and are boring. We've also happened to get, like, some amazing baseball games, and, like, Randy Arozarena is the coolest guy on earth apparently. And it's just been a lot of fun. Like, I think it's hard. It's hard to go into this game tonight and have, like, a negative opinion of this tournament. I just think it's been so fun.
Well, it's also, in a good way, it's bizarre to see Marlins Park, like, lit.
Jumping, yeah.
Electric, like, to put Randy Arozarena in a setting where he's not playing at the Trop, which I know he goes on the road too, but it's just a different vibe when the guys are in Miami and having a good time at a park that doesn't often draw all that well, unless Alcantara's pitching. That's about it.
Even then,
I know I'm trying to be generous and hype up the Marlins here. Marlins man been at these games?
Oh yeah,
he has. No surprise. Okay. Hey, I'll say this. I'm tuning into it. I'll admit I've been watching clips. I haven't consumed full games. I had the game on last night. Saw the home run. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of interested. I'm interested to see how this looks tonight.
Did it help that it was a Red Sox player?
No, I mean, I don't care about that. I want to wrap my head around a big baseball event besides the World Series.
Yeah.
So come on, Gary, and don't bait me like that.
I was just asking.
I'm fair. Let's go to the association. Let's look at tonight's slate in the NBA. Unless you guys have any more thoughts on the game tonight, I think we've said what we feel. Okay,
I think we're good.
Great. What do we like tonight in the association? Big slate in the NBA. Not a gigantic slate, but enough games to 6 games on the slate for tonight.
6 games, couple of big old spreads. You've got the
right
Pelicans and the Hawks both favored by 13.5.
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm not particularly interested in either of those, although it does look like there has been some sharp activity on both. The Spurs are basically resting everybody. I think even Keldon Johnson has been downgraded to doubtful for tonight.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be the only starter playing, I think.
Who is?
I think Trey Jones is like the only guy in, basically.
No, he was doubtful too.
Oh, was he? There you go.
So they know what they're doing. They're trying to finish with one of the 3 worst records, and they're doing a good job of it. I'm going to go with a bet here that kind of feels square, but if you look at the betting numbers, it's really not. I'm laying the points with Boston on the road. The public really likes this Kings team. They are actually the preferred side here in terms of just number of bets. And the Kings are a fun team. Don't get me wrong. They score a lot of points and they play fast. I think they're now up to first in the league in points per game or offensive efficiency, one of those 2 stats, but they're just not on the caliber of the Celtics when the Celtics are at their best. And the Celtics are getting some help back. They're going to have Robert Williams back in the lineup tonight. Marcus Smart and Al Horford are going to play after resting the last game. So Boston, despite some of their recent struggles, they've still been the best team in the league this season. I think laying less than 5 with them on the road is acceptable in this spot.
121 points per game. The Sacramento Kings, number 1 in the NBA. You are correct. Offensive rating, number 1 in the NBA, 118.6.
A lot of people out there owe the Kings an apology. There were a lot of LOL Kangs takes after they traded Tyrese Halliburton for Domantas Sabonis. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that Tyrese Halliburton isn't a great player, because he is. But this Kings season does not happen if they still have him and De'Aaron Fox both in the backcourt, right? They gave up a position of strength to acquire a really good player in Domantas Sabonis, who I personally think is one of the more undervalued players in the league. And kudos to them for taking a risk. And I hope it pays off, not just this season for them, but they can continue to, build on it and make some additional postseason runs in the future.
And if folks were interested in the Kings when Kevin Durant was acquired by Phoenix, you got some good value on the Kings, because they've stayed right where they've been for a while now, the 3 seed, and they've staved off
to the 2 now.
Yeah, Memphis is falling out.
Okay. Right now I see they're the 3. They're 1 game back of Memphis.
Okay, well,
they could get the 2. No, I'm just saying, as of right now.
Yeah, it's a lot closer than it was 2 weeks ago. Although
Right.
Jaws back tomorrow.
The Kings
apparently.
lost their last game. Okay, so they were the 2 up until a couple days ago.
It felt inevitable that they were just going to wind up the 3, but they've made it interesting. And Phoenix, with the Durant injury, the minute he got there, basically, that has prevented the Kings being caught by anyone else for the 3 spot. Gary, and how about yourself?
The West, I'm sorry, Gary, and I'll let you talk in a second. But
Yeah.
All right.
The West is just it's just so weird, because it's like it's hard to even know if you want the 2 seed or the 3 seed, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're the 3 seed right now, congratulations, you get the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh gosh.
But
Kings Warriors would be fun, I will say.
The Warriors and the Pelicans, who are in 12th place, are separated by 2 games in the standings.
Wild.
Like, where these teams are ultimately going to fall when all is said and done, no one has any idea at this point. So trying to jockey for seed, which we've seen some teams do in the past, it's just not really going to be possible this year, at least until the very last couple games of the year.
Yeah. It really feels like I don't want to be too negative or conspiracy theory guy, but I feel like that's almost the reason that the Grizzlies were pretty like, yeah, Ja, like, shame on you, slap on the wrist. Like, we're going to take a stand here. Like, I think if this is a normal NBA season and they were like, we need the 2 seed, I think maybe that would have gone down a little differently. But like Matt's saying, like, what's the difference right now between the 2 and the 4? Like, you want home court advantage, obviously, but I don't know. It's such a mess. And I think for Adam Silver, like, this is the dream scenario. This is the no one can tank. Like, I know there was this is a huge storyline in Boston last year, Glash, like, final game of the season. Do you try and lose to avoid the Nets because everyone's scared of the Nets, or do you just play it out? And like, there's not going to be any of that in the West this season, or maybe there will be the last day, but it's going to go right down to the wire. So that's really interesting.
In Boston,
here with the potential to be like just a disaster from a tanking perspective, the fact that every team in the West is essentially still live for the play-in tournament, and the fact that Detroit, Houston, and San Antonio have been so much worse than everybody else, I feel like it's been much better than I expected personally.
Yeah.
And in Boston's case, what gets forgotten is that the Nets, those 4 Nets games are actually competitive games in the first round last year. Like,
yeah, the first one especially. Speaking of the Pistons, I literally should set up like an alert on my phone for every time this DraftKings Sportsbook lists a Pistons game or a Hornets game with a total above 230. Because anytime that happens, I'm automatically going to bet the under. And I realize that the 237 total for tonight's Pistons-Hawks game says a lot more about the Hawks than it does about the Pistons. But still, to get to a number like 237, you need both teams carrying their weight. even a little bit. And I just have some serious concerns that the Pistons will be able to carry their weight in this game to get this to a number that is 238, 240, 242, something along those lines. The Hawks have proven they can score 140 points themselves. So that's on the table. But, you know, in the month of March, the Pistons are operating at a relatively slow pace. They're 1-9. They, I believe, have the second lowest offensive rating in the NBA. The Hawks have been fantastic on offense. They're running at a high pace. Like, that's all great. But I don't know, like, if we're to believe this line is even somewhat accurate, like, there's a chance that the Hawks aren't even playing their starters late in the game. And sometimes that does actually work to the advantage of the over because you just get some real funny business basketball at the end of these games.
These guys are so happy to be out on the court. They're just letting it fly.
Yeah. But I'm still going to take the under here. I just think this number is way too big for a game involving the Pistons.
In the month of March, the Detroit Pistons,
I know they're 0-4 to the under their last 4 games and 0-4 to the under their last 4 road games.
Pistons in pace, they're at 97.9, which is bottom third of the league in the month of March. And that's a
Can I give you a prop from that game?
Yes.
No. Yes.
My guy, the Frenchman himself, Killian Hayes, over 7.5 dimes at plus 120. Hayes has been playing a ton of minutes recently, close to or over 35 over his last 5 games. He's averaging just under 10 assists over that stretch, and he's handed out at least 11 assists in 3 of those games. So even if you wanted to play this number a little bit higher as part of like a single game parlay, I would be okay with that too at increased odds. But even in games that haven't been all that competitive, Hayes has just been getting a ton of run. And I think when you factor in, the Hawks being a fast team, relatively poor defensively, like he can get to 8 dimes in this spot.
So they've met 3 times. They met early in the season. One of those games did go over the number of 237, Garion, but 2 of them went well under. And to your point, it's because the Pistons just couldn't keep up. The most recent game they matched up, they only scored 105. And Jalen Duran's out.
There was a stretch, I believe they failed to score 100 points in like 4 of 5 games, which is almost impossible to do in this version of the NBA.
Today's league.
Yeah. So again, if you lose this bet tonight, you're probably losing it because the Hawks just scored 146 points. Tough beat, but I think Detroit's around like 100 tonight. So you've got some wiggle room here.
Right. Last 3 games, 97, 100, 100 for the Pistons.
Just do it with 8 Killian assists and you could score as few points as you want.
So, well, now you got me thinking. What's the team total for the Pistons tonight?
I'm going to guess like 104.5, something like that. No, it'd have to be higher in this on a game like that. So
with
probably like 111.5, something like that.
111.5. Why don't you just take the under on that?
Yeah, could do that too.
Okay, just a question, just a thought.
No, I'm agreeing with you. You could do that too, of course.
All right. Well, just, to avoid the Atlanta Hawks side and the fear of them putting up, because there's juice on their over at 125.5. Avoid them altogether and go to the Pistons. Lamarca, I like the fact that you like Boston tonight. That makes me feel better as a fan because they have not. This Jaylen Brown stuff that's out now, like, oh boy, it's all crumbling. I'm getting Phoenix Suns vibes right now with Boston.
Wow, it's crazy to think the guy who just loved the only Celtic who ever came out and said how much he loved Kyrie Irving as a teammate could possibly be taking an interesting route in his own free agency. I'm shocked. Yeah. I really am.
That's fine. Just now, like, we got a month left in the regular season. Please,
the heart wants what it wants, Glash, and
I give him credit for being honest. That's cool. Like, you're not doing what Kyrie did, which was like, oh, I plan on being here forever, and he's got the microphone and everything at half court. But anyway,
but couldn't you argue? Because your argument right now, though, is that you don't want him doing this right, like with a month left in the season. That's when Kyrie went to the mic and was like, "No, I'm a team guy," because he was trying to help the season.
That's true.
So which is better, which is worse?
You're right.
All I know is I'm investing in Sage companies. We might have to release some more demons at the Boston Garden.
Any other spots that we like, or anything else in the NBA world that catches your attention?
I mean, we can talk some DFS if we want.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. I'll pull it up.
I was just going to say, like, immediately, and I know this has been the case the last couple games. I still don't know why it continues to happen, but SGA is less than 10K. So play SGA. Very easy rule of thumb.
I think I wrote that exact sentence today, not for DraftKings, but it's out there in the ethos. I don't understand it either.
Is that credit to the? Is that because the Clippers can guard him? Is that?
No, I think
no one can guard him.
The perception was that he was going to get shut down and that the Thunder were going to start tanking, because there was a stretch where he missed 4 or 5 games. So when he came back, they put him at 9,200, but he's been playing, 36 minutes pretty consistently since returning to the lineup, and his salary just hasn't caught back up to what it's supposed to be. So I'm with Gary in 100%. I think that is a clear buy. The Spurs are going to be your primary source of value tonight. Sandro Mamukelashvili, say that 7 times fast, gets most of the center minutes tonight, I would imagine, with Zach Collins out. And he's been pretty good on a per minute basis. Keita Bates-Diop, I think, is a nice value. Devontae Graham should handle a lot of the offense. So I think you're going to want to pay up for one of the stud point guards, either Trae Young or SGA, and then balance it out with some Spurs value.
From a futures perspective, I know Gary and I, Lamarca, talked a lot about Embiid, Jokic, and Gary, and I think I felt smart being with you. The what was it? The NOS comparison, the Fast and Furious NOS comparison.
You like my Fast and Furious comparison.
That was last Friday. Again, I will never forget that. I won't. We've got We've got 2 minutes. The numbers moved, and Embiid is now the significant favorite to win this award. Lamarca, do you have a thought?
Crazy how it flips, man. It just takes 1-2 week stretch where, you're not playing your best basketball, and, Jokic opened the door just to crack. And to Joel Embiid's fairness, he didn't just go through the door. He kicked the door off the hinges. He has been playing that good.
Yeah, he's the Big Bird gif, or the Big Bird video that is viral on Twitter. Ever seen that one where the guy wearing the Big Bird costume knocks over the door when he walks into the house? That's what Embiid did to this award right now.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'll
have to send it to you then.
You could have gone with like Kool-Aid Man. We all would have known what you were talking about. But.
Okay, that too. That would have worked too. Well, I said to Gary, and I think the only way this becomes a race is if Jokic and the Nuggets beat the Sixers head to head at the end of this month.
You never know what's going to happen. The 76ers could go on and lose 4 of their next 5 games. If I was buying a player at this point, I would be buying Jokic at these odds. I would not be chasing this team with Joel Embiid, because as we've just seen, it can change in 2 weeks. And we've got, roughly 3 weeks left here in the regular season.
2 weeks
That is a good lesson, though. Like, I feel like a lot of times we come on and we say things like, well, I'm not going to talk about the favorite because it's not fun to talk about the favorite. And then we'll dive into like some huge like flyer player, whatever. But this is the reason you don't want to be betting these guys at peak value, because there's a situation, if you've been following this really closely, you could have bet Jokic at like plus 300 6 weeks ago. And then as Embiid was starting to pick up some heat, and, as Jokic was tailing off and the Nuggets were losing some games, you could have bet Embiid at like plus 200. Now you're sitting there with one of those 2 guys is winning, and you've got each at plus money bets. So like,
sprinkle a little Giannis in just for fun.
Yeah, just to make sure. But that's why you don't ever want to bet these guys. What's Embiid right now? Like minus 200, basically?
Minus 240.
Yeah, like when we were talking about this last week, he was, I think, minus 150. And that's about the last point I would have been like, you can still get in, but do it fast. Like, now there's no point.
Even money, minus 110 last Friday when you and I did the show. Okay, that's all the time we have. And I don't think either of these players are.
Was I not here last Friday?
No, you weren't. You skipped out or something.
I think it was Thursday. We did this Thursday.
Oh, was it? It was Thursday.
Yeah.
I apologize. That was Thursday. Okay, my fault. I take it back. You were not tardy or absent. We'll fix that in the school log for you. Okay, thanks to Gary and Thorne, Matt Lamarca, Matt and Eamon for what they do behind the scenes to get us up and running. Brendan Glasheen, you all have a great rest of your Tuesday. Enjoy the WBC, consume it, and also the NBA and whatever else that you may be enjoying. The NIT, I don't know what else is happening tonight. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. The Sweat is back at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, YouTube, Twitch, and